My name's Scott McKenzie. This is my final project video on uh, two things in the class that changed my view and that I'm going to walk away from after this class with a changed perspective on. First one is going to be how we look at sugar as a drug. Growing up, I definitely thought that sugar was just something that made things taste good, and I knew that the only thing that could happen bad from eating too much sugar to me was that you get fat, and that's it's not a lot, and I admit that I definitely was naive coming into this class learning about this, and this definitely was an eye opener to me. This was one of the things I was passionate about writing this the reflective essay for this one. I think it was maybe the first week of classes when we discussed this, and part of that discussion we also talked about different things. We talked, is sugar a drug? Is coffee a drug? Is nicotine a drug? And it was fun to hear the response from the rest of the class, just what constitutes a drug and what pushes that line. And I walked in really with no line, thinking, of course it's not a drug, it can't be. But to hear the effects that it has, it's discussed in the Taubes article. Just the reaction it has with your brain. Let me just try and think of how I could go deeper into it. From the Taubes article really discussed how, we use sugar now as the same way that we would any other substance, the same way that someone would smoke cigarettes, the same way that someone would drink alcohol, that there is a reaction that happens in your brain from eating sugar, and repeated eating of sugar could lead to an addiction from it, like any other substance that gives you a pleasurable sensation in your head. That article, definitely laid it out into the science terms for me. I didn't really buy it after that. I said, okay, there might be one view on it. And then really the Michael Moss one is the one that really just blew it, it just blew it out of the water for me. It blew my mind because it discussed the secret meetings of these large food conglomerates to make their food addictive, and how they would seek out scientists, food optimizers, as they call them, to actually, take their, whatever it might be, Chips Ahoy cookie, and make it the most addictive and most pleasurable to the consumer. When they eat it, they say, okay, well, I gotta have more, I gotta buy this again, as these companies were losing sales. And, that to me just proves, that's just some of the shadiest stuff ever, man. If the food companies, you think you're getting a pack of cookies, but really you're getting something that's been modified in a lab to connect with your brain to the point where you will, more times than not, they're hopefully guaranteeing, they're modifying it to the point where they could, to an effect, guarantee that you'll come back and buy that product again, and buy that cookie or that soda or that chip or whatever it might be. And I think that's just crazy. And that totally was reinforced in the last article that was given, which was the Jacobs and Ritchell article, the Andrew Jacobs and Matt Ritchell article, which was how big business got Brazil hooked on junk food. And that just totally, if it wasn't solidified already by the Moss article, it's like you read that and you saw how they're essentially, giant companies like Nestle have found a way to penetrate the most remote parts of the world, the Amazon, essentially. This article was on Brazil. It talked about how they would, essentially have, most of the time it would be women that would then, I think all the time it would be women, pardon me. They would only employ women, and they would essentially be vendors in their local community for Nestle products, be it, cookies or powdered milk, or, Nestle has a wide array of the products that they sell. They sell everything from breads to baby formula, which people need to cookies and chips and, sugary snacks, which are more of a treat and, not really the sustenance that one needs if, they're malnourished and living in the Amazon. And so, and these women, they do sell both things, and Nestle provides them with both things. However, there is a much greater incentive for them to be selling these sugary snacks and these things with a high sugar content, as they're the most popular, and they give them the most return on their investment. They give them the most reason to be out there all day selling stuff. I mean, they just simply won't make the profits that they could compared to their competitor if they're just selling the bread and baby formula compared to their competitor who's selling the chips and the cookies. There's just it's crazy like that, where you've also seen this effect in the people of Brazil, where obesity has become a factor, and their obesity rate has skyrocketed compared to when they were on, eating their traditional Amazonian diet. I couldn't tell you exactly what that consists of, but it definitely didn't consist of, Nestle Galletas and other chips and things that they would be offering right now. Yeah, I mean, and just the fact that these consumers would continuously go back and buy these same products, knowing that it was bad for them, and these vendors knowing that they're sometimes selling an absorbent amount of product, an enormous amount of product to this one person, and yeah, it just proves to me that sugar is definitely an addictive drug that somehow got to slip under the radar of the DEA, because it seems that it could be abused, and it certainly can be abused. It's been proven, and it reacts with our brain, and it just hearing it out loud, it's crazy to me. That's been one thing that whenever people ask me how my semester is going, oh, what classes are you taking? Oh, I'm taking this one, Drugs, Law, and Society. Oh, that's cool. You learn anything cool? Yeah. Did you know sugar's a drug? And a lot of people, they're just not ready for that. Second topic that I came away from was the podcast. The podcast, it was specifically called, let me pull up the title just to make sure that I get it right. Yeah, so it was featuring, pardon me for a moment. So yeah, it was the You're Wrong About podcast with Mike and Sarah, and it was their episode on homelessness. And so, this one definitely, it changed my views on how people view it. I'm going to critique it a little bit, because it seemed very statistic based, the way that they were addressing their numbers, and they were the main topic of it, just for a little bit of background, the main topic of it was about how homelessness in Utah in particular, and how Mike spent some time in Utah and was documenting homelessness, has been writing about it, and is writing a academic article for this topic, and how Utah essentially tried to solve homelessness. And the article begins by talking about some of the chronic problems with homelessness, and I don't know, I'm just going to critique the part about drugs, a little bit, just because it seemed like they put a lot of emphasis on people. Oh, well, it just came across very insensitive to me. Oh, well, these people, because they use drugs, they are not eligible for the service, and and it just seemed like that was like a problem that they had to get fixed, and that just didn't sit well with me. I mean, compared to just a little outside course material, if you look, there's a company called Homeboy Services. It's out in Los Angeles. It's ran by a Jesuit priest called Father Boyle, and in one of the poorest parishes in Los Angeles. And his whole thing is that rehabilitation services and programs for those that have been released from prison to get back into society and to reintegrate and get a job and get out of their gang life and all this stuff, and all these programs that they don't require you to quit the gang or quit drugs, or they just require you to want to better your life. So I think, talking too much about the drug aspect of it and putting it like they were not able to get housing because of their drug use, that was just a little bit one-sided and insensitive. I feel like there's so many sides when it comes to homelessness. When you talk about convicted felons, for example, they come out and a lot of public housing services aren't available to them as convicted felons. They're just simply ineligible. You talk about people with, and they talk about with drugs. Yeah, a lot of them, they require you to have a clean drug, clean urine sample to get housing or to get housing credits or whatever. But what about those that are actively trying to get off of drugs and are on a methadone treatment and will pee dirty, but really, it just seems it's very one-sided to me. I felt like Sarah during the podcast was really only like listening to respond with like witty little comments and like didn't really add much to the conversation. So walked away feeling a little like weird about that. But I mean, where it did change my view was in how the government has approached the homelessness issue, where they used to build. Mike talked about this. They used to build housing blocks, public housing blocks, like it was a public service thing, like building a dam or a bridge or a highway or something. It was just part of that year's budget to build for people to have houses. And then sometime in the 1980s, they cut that back and they said, okay, let's offer credits, let's offer housing coupons, where now you have people, competing on this open market of capitalism against with a coupon compared to someone that has cash money or credit or could take out a loan or a mortgage, or what I mean. It created this unfair advantage where they just weren't creating the housing for that demand, and that did open my eyes as I looked to go into the real estate field, and specifically have looked to work in low income housing. That's interesting to me, and that definitely makes me want to further my research and find out how can I create my business in the way that I want to run my real estate holdings when it comes to helping low-income people acquire housing. What's the best way to do that, and can I base that off of the government model of the 70s, where that should just be that seemed to have worked before until they switched it up for housing coupons, and granted, there's a lot more to go into on this one. I found it to be an interesting podcast. I'm definitely going to listen to more of the You're Wrong About series. I just feel, I came away from it with the opinion that the government really left some people out there to dry with that. And another, again, goes back, mind-blowing how, granted it was before my time, I just thought that was the way that it always worked. But definitely taught me something new, something that is going to be applicable to my career in the future, that I'm really glad that I learned this semester, honestly. Not really much else to say to top it off. Thank you to Professor Nero for everything this semester. You rock. This COVID semester has been weird for everyone. I can imagine on the professor's end. My mother's a professor as well, doing the COVID thing, and it looks way more stressful than being a student. So thank you for being an awesome professor this semester, and I hope you have a great summer. Thank you very much.